Every season is spooky season in our book.
So settle in and prepare to be shook.
You are listening to Shook, a comedic podcast about all things paranormal and unexplained.
Hey friends, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Sannah. And fun fact, we have our friends from Speak of the Devil Pod back on again for another movie discussion.
Woohoo! Welcome, Taylor and Kayla. Good to see you guys again.
Thank you. We're happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Did you guys want to share any fun facts before we dig into the title of the evening?
We are married. Fun fact.
Fun fact, we are officially government legally bound to one another.
Congratulations.
So excited.
Thank you.
Yay. And I am so excited. So I'm going to be honest with y'all and honest with the listeners. So this movie, I'm not going to say what it is yet, but the movie that we are going to talk about today, I'm about 20 minutes out from the end of that. So I'm about to find out right here and now how it ends. Who wants to reveal the title?
You can do it, Kayla. Didn't you pick it? You've been the one wanting to watch this forever.
Yeah, it is technically my pick, so I'll go ahead. This is Immaculate that we are talking about today with Sydney Sweeney, the one and only.
The one and only.
Yes.
Well, if y'all want to take it away in your usual format, we can pepper in discussion here and there.
Well, I'll let Taylor kick it off because usually we do some fun facts and a little summary.
Yep. So because it just came out in 2024. I don't have a lot of fun facts. People are still watching it. Came out in 2024, has 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb, 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 57% on Metacritic. Kind of so-so, I guess, so far. This is directed by Michael Mohan, who also directed The Voyeurs. This is written by Andrew Lobel, who I think also helped write The Voyeurs. I started getting into who produces the movies because we had, was it The Orphan, Kayla, that we found out was produced by Leonardo DiCaprio?
Mm-hmm.
What?
So ever since I found that, I was like, so
what?
Ever since then, I was like, I got to figure out who produces these movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
We have some typical movie producers. We have Teddy Schwarzman, who did Imitation Game and I Care a Lot. David Bernard, who produced some episodes of The White Lotus and also the Uncharted movie with Tom Holland. Michael Heimler, who produced Naiad, which is one of those new movies on Netflix that I watched and cried when I watched it. It has Jodie Foster and Annette Bening. It's also produced by Sydney Sweeney and Jonathan Davino, who is Sydney Sweeney's fiance. This is starring Sydney Sweeney. She plays Sister Cecilia. She's been in Euphoria, The Handmaid's Tale, White Lotus, all kinds of stuff. We also have Alvaro Morte, who plays, I wrote his name as Father Ted. I know his name is a lot longer than Ted. He played El Profesor in Money Heist. And then we have Simona Tabasco, who plays Sister Mary. She's the first sister that we meet in the very beginning that runs away. She was actually also in a season of The White Lotus. The budget for this movie was $9 million. And Kayla's favorite question ever is, what do you think it made in the box office?
Okay, the budget was $9 million?
Yeah.
72 million.
So this movie had a lot of promo and a lot of festival circuit stuff and a lot of Q&A stuff. And so I think it probably had a pretty good turnout, but by today's standards, which is still not the best. I'm honestly going to have to say lower, like 30, 40 million.
That's pretty close. Kayla, do you want to give a guess?
Yeah, that was going to be around my guess too. I'm going to go with 42 million.
It is 23 million.
Oh, I was off by more than triple.
Yeah.
That's horror. Yeah.
Especially a springtime. Like it was released like a couple months ago around. It's not like a Halloween time, super spooky, but
yeah. And the religious themes.
Oh yeah,
it's just not as attractive of a horror option on the surface.
No.
But gosh, it's so good. Like I'm so surprised it only had 70-something% Rotten Tomatoes. You said?
Yeah, like 70-something%, and then like 5 out of 10 stars. So it was like very
Wow.
mid, like really mid. So
I was really surprised at how good it was and how much I liked it.
Me too,
Yeah.
because I don't ever seek out a religiously themed Catholic, demonic, anything in that realm because it tends to scare me too much.
It was very good. It also very much gave me Midsummer vibes.
Yes,
Big time.
very much. The isolation of it all.
I'll do a quick summary or a synopsis. This one comes straight from IMDb, which always gives the best ones. Cecilia, an American nun of devout faith, embarks on a new journey in a remote convent in the picturesque Italian countryside. Cecilia's warm welcome quickly devolves into a nightmare as it becomes clear her new home harbors a sinister secret and unspeakable horrors.
Well, did anybody else think it was going to be one thing and then find out, oh crap, this is totally not what I expected?
See, I grew up Catholic, so I hear Immaculate and I think Immaculate Conception.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of thought that that's what it was going to be about. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. I mean, I didn't predict any of it other than the fact that it had to do with an Immaculate Conception. Spoiler alert. But
I had a predictive moment actually that I was wrong about. When we first meet Father Tedeschi and they're talking with their wine facing each other in the foyer, I thought that there was going to be something between them at some point. Genuinely. That is just like what it was giving, just the casual nature of how they were talking to each other. And so I was like, oh shit, she's going to be the convent harlot, I guess, or the girl that gets painted that way. Well, I was pleasantly surprised that it didn't take that turn because that was very predictable.
yeah, I thought that too. Because he's very like flirtatious almost.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, this is what's going to happen. Something's going to happen between them. And then maybe he like forces her to lie about it.
Yeah.
And then they have the idea that it's immaculate, even though it's not.
Exactly. I thought there was going to be something where she actually gets physically pregnant.
Right.
Like,
part of the reason why we wanted to do this movie was we were thinking it was going to be pretty paranormal, supernatural in nature, but it didn't give that. That's, I don't know.
I fully thought it was going to be paranormal. I thought we were going the demon route. I mean, I guess it had some supernatural elements, but it was almost more science fiction-y.
There seemed to be an explanation for everything. Like the lady that she thought was a ghost was actually a lady with dementia. Yeah. So I guess, Kayla, if you want to take us through all the highlights.
Yeah.
All right. So the movie opens up. We meet a nun who is praying late at night. Her name is Sister Mary. Taylor said this earlier. I wrote it down because I thought it was going to be important, and then her name's not important. But for what it's worth, her name is Sister Mary. And we see her gather some of her things, and she sneaks into the bedroom of what looks like an older nun, maybe like a church superior. And she goes into her bedside dresser and she opens the drawer and takes out a set of keys. And as she's kind of trying to sneak out of the room, she, of course, accidentally makes some noise and she starts running. And it seems like she's being pursued because as she leaves what we see is the convent, some lights go on outside and she runs to the front gate and she starts to unlock it, but she's fumbling a lot with the keys. We see this group of hooded figures approach her from behind. They kind of look like they're in their robes like nuns, but they've got hoods over their heads. We can't really see their faces, and we see them capture her. And this is, maybe one of y'all can correct me, it looks like, did they break her leg in the gate?
Yeah. At the knee.
I don't like gore like
I hate to
something
see it.
about legs and joints and things. No, ma'am.
Yeah, when they snap and it's
Hate it.
She's unconscious and she comes to inside a box, what we can pretty safely assume is a coffin, and she pretty quickly realizes that she's being buried alive because she hears dirt fall around her and she starts banging on the walls of the coffin and yelling for help, and we slowly just kind of hear her screams fade away. Next scene, we're meeting Sister Cecilia, who is Sydney Sweeney, and she's arriving in Italy to live at the convent. She arrives and she meets Sister Isabel, who at first seems to be like maybe one of the only other sisters who speaks English, but as it goes along, there's others. I think I just assumed that at first because she's kind of helping her translate. And we learn that this is kind of like a hospice convent where they take care of the sisters who are in their final days. So kind of like, the nuns who are older, maybe they're sick, maybe they're not doing too well, that they can come there and they can kind of live out their final days. And also that it was built on catacombs, and the catacombs, of course, are off limits.
She also has a really nice room. I was like, I don't think sisters have a nice room. I
Yeah,
thought they're like all stacked
right.
on top of each other.
I thought there would be bunk beds.
Yeah. I was
Yeah,
like, she has a
something.
private room.
Yeah.
Super nice things. I was like,
Yeah, it is. It's a really nice room. I would go there. She dons her robe, she takes her vows, she meets Father Sal for the first time, and her vows essentially state that she'll devote her life to Christ, that she'll live a life free of material possessions, and she takes on a vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So they have like a little gathering afterwards, kind of like a celebration or like a welcome. And Father Sal is telling Cecilia that this is her home now. And he also tells her that he has a background in science, but it didn't help him understand the world any better, but that God brought him to religion and brought him to be a priest. So in return, Cecilia explains to him that when she was 12, she fell through the ice into a river and she was trapped underneath, and her heart stopped for almost 7 minutes. So she says that she knows that God saved her, and she's been looking for the reason why God saved her. So that, among other things, among just the rest of her life experiences, are what has brought her there. So she excuses herself. She goes to the bathroom. She hears a noise that leads her into kind of like a chapel, what looks, at least to me at first, like a chapel area. And we'll find out that it's something a little different. But she finds an elderly nun face down on the ground. And when she turns around to see Cecilia, momentarily she appears to have no face. Cecilia is very alarmed and she goes to get help, but she is interrupted by Reverend Mother, who shows her a piece of a nail that they have on display, which is allegedly a piece of a nail that crucified Jesus that they keep as an artifact, and they just keep it there in the convent.
how they got that, I have no idea.
That was my question. How did they
Yeah.
get them to be in possession of that nail?
Who authenticated that?
Yeah,
It could just be a nail.
I think it's probably a knockoff, but
It's a fake version of it. No
Yeah.
certificate of authenticity.
No, it's from Temu.
not the Timu.
A Timu nail.
So Cecilia passes out, which in all fairness is a completely valid reaction to being shown this nail. So we see Cecilia presumably the next day at confession, and she confesses that she's been careless, that she drank too much, and that was why she passed out. Surely not from the stress of seeing the Timu nail.
The Timu nail. TM.
The Timu nail will come into play later too. We're going to be seeing a lot of it. But some kind of weird things start to happen, and it seems like there's no one on the other end of her confession, and some hands kind of reach out through the wood that's behind her and grab her and pull her through. And she's, kind of pulled back by what is revealed to be, again, a group of these faceless nuns. And she's stabbed, which prompts her to startle awake from what is revealed to have been a nightmare. So, Sister Isabel is mentoring Cecilia and Gwen, who is another sister who Cecilia kind of starts to become friendly with. And we see this kind of fun, honestly, little montage of Cecilia learning the ropes and like learning how to take care of the elders and how to do chores. They teach her how to slaughter a chicken, which is exciting.
Yeah, she frolicked until then, and then she said, I'm out.
That's my limit.
Like, absolutely not. So Cecilia goes to bed one night and she's startled awake by an elderly sister sneaking into her room and cutting a piece of her hair. Did I get that right?
Mhm.
Yes.
It was like a long strand of her hair.
I was so alarmed when I was like, what is she holding? And again, I've said this before on our podcast. Sometimes when movies are too dark, I'm like, my eyes are bad. I'm like 90 years old. I'm like, I can't see that. And I was like, did she cut her hair off?
Well, I don't know if you could see because it was very, very dark. The whole film kind of is, but I could see the scissors and the slow movement of her appearing. I yelped. I was like, like, and I don't usually freak out like that, but the scissors, I was like, what is she gonna do with these scissors?
It could have been worse than cutting the
Oh
hair.
God, could have been way worse.
So the elderly sister starts telling Cecilia that she's blessed. They all love her. And she calls her a saint. And Cecilia is kind of like, all right, Grandma, let's go back to bed. And she kind of helps her back into bed and notices then that she has scars in the shape of a cross on her feet. Cecilia learns that Gwen is escaping an abusive relationship and that she was recruited to the convent by nuns, that she met at a survivor support group. So that's a little sketchy. That's some red flags there that they're going and they're seeking out vulnerable women in a support group. And there's a cute little comedic relief moment where Gwen is kind of like, well, you know, it just sounded really great, so I decided to do it. And Cecilia's like, so you don't believe in God? And Gwen's like, of course I do. Life is so cruel. Only a man can be responsible.
Yes, I loved that part.
She spoke the truth. So Cecilia gets nauseous in this moment and starts to gag. Gwen says that she's going to go call the doctor for her. Cecilia sees the doctor and she's brought into a room with Father Sal and a couple of the convent superiors. And they start to question her about whether or not she's kept her vows and whether or not she's ever been with a man, ever. She says she has kept her vows. She insists that she never has been with a man or a woman or anyone, she says. And she is informed that she is pregnant.
Immaculate conception.
Surprise, surprise.
The second coming of Christ.
Yes. And she insists to the superiors that she's kept her vows, she's not been with anyone, and they believe her and they tell her that it's a miracle and that God has chosen her to carry the second coming of Christ. Which brings us into the second trimester, which they so kindly outline for us on the little. I love when there's screens that tell us about the passage of time in movies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. I really need that. And we see Cecilia throw up, and she's throwing up now more aggressively. And she's
I mean, one of her teeth falls out, so that's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, she loses a tooth in the process, so that's pretty bad. That seems like you should see a doctor probably about that. She enters the dining room. Everyone rises to greet her. So we kind of see that things are a little different now. Everyone is kind of babying her, and one of the sisters gives her like a special drink and is like, "Your only job is the baby." So she's growing Jesus. She's hard at work.
She is Mother Mary.
She sure is.
Not everyone's happy about it, though.
Not everyone is a fan of Cecilia, and she's laying in a bath when she's attacked from behind by Sister Isabel, who says that it was supposed to be her and tries to drown Cecilia. Some other sisters hear the commotion and they come in to save her. They drag Isabel away, and Isabel is saying that they need to try again with her, that they can just try again, but with her that time. But Cecilia does start asking some questions, and Father Sal tells her that seeing the miracle must have just triggered some jealousy for Isabel, and he promises that it will never happen again. Cecilia does request to go see a real doctor, and Father Sal is like, it's fine. You're in good health, and the convent doctor is just fine, and it's safest for you to stay here until the Savior is born.
Doctor's like, yeah, I deliver babies from time to time. He's the OB for Jesus Christ, and he just delivers babies sometimes.
So shortly after this, Sister Isabel mysteriously falls from a roof, allegedly kills herself, and dies. Gwen tells Cecilia that she does not trust this place, and Cecilia says she doesn't think that she can leave. And they kind of start bickering, and Father Sal overhears and asks what's up. And Sister Gwen starts yelling at Father Sal and some of the other superiors, and she is dragged away. Then Cecilia is alone in her room at night when she sees a painting on her wall kind of fall, but not fall all the way. It just kind of, if it were hung up by two nails, it would be like one of the nails fell and it just kind of swings down. She gets up to get a closer look and she sees that on the wall there's a Bible passage written, which is 2 Corinthians 11:4.
For Satan himself often masquerades as an angel of light.
Which is some interesting foreshadowing. That's alarming. She goes looking for Gwen. She ends up coming upon a room where she finds a drawer of files, and she ends up pulling out her own to find that there are newspaper articles in her file about her drowning incident as a child.
And some genetic tests.
Yes. So, of course, suggesting that they've been probably watching her and following her. And she gets distracted by this investigation, hearing a noise, and she goes to take a look, and she sees that Gwen is chained up by some of the hooded, faceless figures, and she watches them cut her tongue off, which I really did not like. I cringed.
Hated it.
I had to close my eyes and my ears.
Yeah, it was a tough watch, that one.
No.
Mm-hmm.
So Cecilia, after witnessing this, is grabbed from behind by an elder nun who essentially tells Cecilia that she's never going to leave. The next morning, Cecilia wakes up screaming and bleeding between her legs. And there's kind of an internal struggle about whether they should call an ambulance, whether she needs to go to a hospital. It's very clear that she needs to go to a hospital, but they don't want to take her and they're not sure. And Father Sal eventually puts her in the car and starts driving. But meanwhile, a woman back at the convent is crying and she's praying over the blood that Cecilia left behind on the bed. And she kind of looks down and she sees a feather on the ground, which leads her to look a little closer and see that hidden under the bed there is a dead chicken.
Yep.
Which causes her to realize that Miss Cecilia killed a chicken and used the blood to fake a miscarriage. So, of course, she rats Cecilia out immediately. Father Sal gets a phone call right away. They're going to put a stop to that.
She clucked around and they found out.
That was a good one.
Oh, that was a good one. So Cecilia realizes that she's been found out and she tries to run. And you guys, I love this running scene. This was not the first moment I got big Midsummer vibes, but it was one of the moments I got Midsummer vibes. But because you kind of see like her legs moving and you just see the blood around her white dress. And then in the background, it's just like this amazing countryside that's like, I don't know, like morning, kind of dusky. I don't know. It was really, really cool. I really liked this.
And she's booking it. She's still in her second trimester.
They catch her. She's not fast enough. So she finally asks Father Sal what he did. And he explains his grand plan to her. Or I don't even know if it's a plan. It's just an insane thing that he did. But he explains to her that he has taken DNA from blood and pieces of tissue that were found on the Timu nail that they have from Jesus's crucifixion that they got. However, he used that DNA to impregnate Cecilia. And he tells her that the baby inside her is their first success out of many attempts. I'm not clear how he knows yet that this is a success or if he's just going by how long the pregnancy has.
Probably because all those other ones in the specimen jars were like little fetuses.
They look barely like babies at all, like very early on. So
yeah, and he's got this laboratory, which is such a contrast to the convent where, again, I mean, like we've been talking about, it almost blurs the lines of time. Like you don't even really realize that you're in modern day. And then all of a sudden he's like, here's my laboratory. And he ties Cecilia up to a chair and he brands her feet with a cross symbol and says that she'll never stray again. And he essentially shuts Cecilia away. in her room.
You could see like her skin bubbling after they did it.
Oh, it was awful.
It was so gross, but also like really cool how they did it. Where I was like, whoa, like that looks really real, but also it's so gross.
Yeah. Did y'all notice? Because it was very dark at the beginning when that first woman was, the first nun was leaving. They did a close up on her feet and she had the brand too, I
She
think.
did?
Oh, did she? I didn't catch
I
that.
didn't notice that.
The brand was also
Mhm.
on the nun that seemingly had dementia, the one that cut her hair.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
remember when she went and took her back to the room and then she was laying down and then
Yeah.
she spent some time looking by candlelight at the scars on her feet.
Crazy. All the nuns have tried to run, I guess, at some point.
And then it's the third trimester, and Cecilia goes to confession. She asks kind of what the great plan is, and she says that this isn't God's work. And the cardinal says, if it's not God's work, then why does God not stop us? So they don't care. They really don't. They're just ready to produce the second coming of Christ. And the baby is going to be born any day now. Cecilia is left alone with Reverend Mother, who we met earlier and was the first one to show Cecilia the nail. Cecilia kills her by hitting her in the head with a cross, which is really, I mean, this heavily pregnant. I think that's pretty impressive.
And she's doing it from like a laying down
Mm-hmm.
position, and it looks, I mean, you can't really, I think it's made of like iron.
Mm-hmm.
She's like lifting it and like hooking it around, and it's probably a lot of adrenaline, I think, at this point. But
Oh, yeah.
my God.
She starts to move towards the door to leave, but her water breaks right in that moment, which is the most inconvenient timing. And the crazy thing is she just keeps going. She doesn't care that her water broke. She's just going to move along. And her next victim is the cardinal, who she sneaks up on from behind with her rosary and chokes him to death with it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. This is where I'm like learning the stuff. The last thing I saw was her bashing Mother Superior's face in. So I'm locked in.
So afterwards, she goes into Father Sal's lab and she starts pouring ethanol all over everything. Father Sal finds her and tries to stop her, first by telling her that all she has to do to end this is deliver their savior. And when reasoning with her doesn't seem to work, he just attacks her. He tries to take away the lighter that she has. The two of them fight, and she ends up locking him behind her in the lab and lighting the ethanol. So essentially burning him alive, for what would appear to be alive.
He got cooked.
Mm-hmm. We hear an explosion in the laboratory, and Cecilia sits on the ground outside screaming in pain because she's still very actively giving birth or in labor. So then we see kind of behind the laboratory door, we see kind of like a shutter, and things kind of go dark, and Father Sal is revealed to still be alive. When he breaks down the door, he has extinguished the flames, and he kind of stumbles out of the lab. And Cecilia runs. She enters the catacombs to get away from him before he can see her. And he follows her in, and they kind of play a little bit of cat and mouse. You can see that she kind of moves out of the way when he gets a little closer. She's got a light with her, but you can see that they kind of are playing games, like she's kind of trying to sneak away. Cecilia finds Gwen's body in the catacombs, and she continues to try to make her way out while still very much actively in labor. I cannot stress enough that she's
Like in between contractions, she is like, okay, now we go. And then contraction, like, okay, now we go.
She must be running on pure adrenaline, because this is, I couldn't even do this with no physical ailments.
Seriously.
So she's guided by her flashlight. She sees sunlight. She finds an exit. As she's climbing up through the exit passage, she's grabbed from behind by Father Sal, and he pulls her back down, and they fight again. And once he kind of has her pinned, he starts to pray over her and starts to cut her open to deliver the baby.
I just knew it.
Mm-hmm. He's ready to take that baby. He's like, you can leave, but I'm taking Jesus with me.
Did he do it with a nail? Because that would be really fucked up.
He had a scalpel.
It was a scalpel.
Oh, well, good. Well, good.
Yeah. I guess he must have had that in his weird little toolkit somewhere in his lab. I don't know.
God.
He saved it from the burning
He
lab.
just carries it just in
Yeah,
case.
just in case he
I don't
needs
know.
it. I mean, honestly, this guy's so weird. He might, I don't know. It seems like he's about to get what he wants. It seems like he's about to get this baby. And she stabs him in the throat in just kind of like one swift movement.
Like,
She stabs him in the throat. And he guesses what with?
The Timu nail, I presume.
She stabbed him right in the throat with the Timu nail.
Hell yeah. That's called Chekhov's gun. Ever heard of it?
He dies, of course. It's kind of one of those like she doesn't stab him from the front either. She stabs him right in the side, and it just goes straight through his neck. And she exits the catacombs and falls to the ground right outside. And she gives birth right there in what is really actually quite a long birth scene. And it was really interesting to me because it felt like a very classic, like Scream Queen type of scene where she's just like screaming and screaming and screaming.
But she's screaming for several reasons, in my opinion.
It's just a shot of her face, and she's covered in blood, and she's screaming and screaming, and then you hear like this gross squelching noise when she has given birth, and you kind of hear Jesus Christ fall into the grass or wherever that they are. And we never really actually get like a pretty decent shot of the baby.
We don't get any shot of the baby.
It's literally blurred out as a blob in the background. You don't ever see a single stitch of its face.
Well, shit.
I don't know how y'all felt about that. I didn't like that.
Would you like a fun fact about the sound?
Yes, please.
So after I watched it, I went on Reddit to see what everybody else was saying. The username is Wish You Were Nude, posted 49 days ago. They said, the sound guy said he layered sounds of a wheezing cat and a phlegmy, congested adult man with labored breathing, making it sound inhuman, and that was intentional. The horrified look on her face when she saw it also leads us to believe that it was an abomination. It's giving Rosemary's Baby, sort of.
So yeah, I guess, Kayla, do you have any conclusion thoughts, wrap-up thoughts?
I really did like this one a lot. I was pleasantly surprised. I feel like this one has the potential to become another kind of like modern classic, sort of along the lines of like Midsummer. Again, I know I said it a couple times, but it just really reminded me of Midsummer. But yeah, I loved it. I think Sydney Sweeney's amazing. That's everything, I think.
I liked it a lot. I really do love Sydney Sweeney. I think she does amazing in dramas and playing a character who's on the brink of a mental crisis, like I said earlier.
Yeah. Well, I loved it, what I saw of it. And like I said, I'm running as soon as we get off here, I'm opening that Amazon tab back up and I'm finishing the last 20 minutes while I eat a burger. This has nothing to do with anything, but I just want y'all to know, fun fact, at the end of the episode, my bestie Danielle made burgers tonight and bratwurst. And like an hour before we recorded, I like went over there. This is part of why I didn't finish the movie in time. She was like, come get you a plate. And so I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to want that when I get done recording. Hell yeah. I'm going to be eating my burger and bratwurst.
Watching some nuns get murdered.
Yeah, eating meat and watching like the bloodshed.
As one does. What did you think, Amanda?
Oh gosh, I loved it. I loved the cinematography, like I said. I loved the whole atmosphere. I loved the pacing. I love me a slow burn that escalates quickly, if that makes any sense, you know? Like when it hits, and it's like a rocket ship. All I gotta say as my final thought, you're doing amazing, Sweeney.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it for her. She like you said, she knows what she's got and she's using it. I love it.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so remind our listeners where they can find you. Of course, we'll link it in the show notes, but
okay, we have Instagram. That's at Speak of the Devil Pod. We also do listener episodes we switch off. I pick one, Kayla picks one, and then we do a listener pick. We post polls, so if you want to vote and like have a say in what movie we watch, definitely follow us on Instagram.
Awesome. And y'all are on Spotify and
We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much everything, I think.
Anywhere you like to listen.
yes, and in Timu Nail's name, give them 5 stars. They deserve it. All right. We love y'all. We'll see you very soon.
Yay!
And until next time, stay
Shook. Thank you so much for tuning into Shook. New episodes of Shook drop every other Wednesday on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you love to listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information on today's episode, please check out our show notes. And until next time, stay shook.
Do you have a personal paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? If so, visit our website at shookpodcast.com and fill out our contact form. Or send us an email at shookparanormalpod@gmail.com.
And one last thing, friends, Shook is a 100% independently produced podcast. So please consider supporting our show by either leaving a review or contributing to our Patreon page. You can find that at patreon.com/shookpodcast.